Hello, dear listener, and welcome to Cellulose Free. My name is Santa, and with me, as always, is my fellow film-watching elf, compadre and son, Thomas.
Hi, hello.
What have you been up to?
You see, I knew you were going to do that because you made the same joke earlier today.
And then I sort of ummed and ahed and thought, oh, do I go through with this? And I decided no. And,
right.
And then we had the kerfuffle with trying to find the disc after the streaming service threatened to not stream properly. But we're going to give that an attempt to run anyway. But yes, so I did it. And it probably peaked a few times, so I'm going to have to fix it in post, and it was a very bad move, all up.
And all your fault.
And all my fault, but here I am trying to grasp some tenuous strands of the festive season and failing miserably. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, what have I been up to?
I'm grasping at those strands, but I do ask you, what have you been up to?
Okay, so, first of all, and most readily apparent, earlier today I whipped up a vaguely orchestral rendition of the Cellulose Free theme, which has sleigh bells under it.
Yes, you talked to your friends at the BBC Orchestra.
Yes.
Threw them some sheet music.
Yes, thank you to Spitfire Audio for producing a bunch of weird free doodads and also a bunch of expensive stuff that I don't have, but a bunch of free weird doodads and also a free version of their BBC Symphony Orchestra package. It's nice. It's very nice to have. Also,
so hang on, are you telling me that you didn't actually get the orchestra to record this?
No.
Are they just samples?
They are just
strung
samples,
together
yes.
in a MIDI file.
No, not even any round robins. If I wanted round robins, I'd have to shell out a few $100s.
Look, it was a glorious thing to listen to.
So each of those notes is the same sample every time. Round robins, you get a few variations. Also this week,
I should point out that is what prompted my jolly red-suited man.
Yes. Well,
so
welcome to the Cellulose Free Holiday Special Part 1.
So it is your fault, yes, but welcome, yes, to that.
Yeah, also this week, a bunch of media happened.
Did it?
All at once.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so Season 2 of Alex Rider came out, and I enjoyed that.
Have not seen it yet.
Time. Some interesting adaptational differences, but understandable ones, I think. The second and apparently final season of Centaur World came out.
Excellent, good.
The weird musical animation
that's right, that thing.
comedy that I enjoyed the first season of and enjoyed the second season of. And the most recent season of Doctor Who wrapped up and was bad.
It was absolute rubbish.
No, it was not good.
It was trash. It was a crime.
There was a good episode in there. There was most of a good episode in there.
It was muddled to begin with. It was muddled in the middle. It was just.
And at the end of it, we didn't resolve the problem.
No, none whatsoever. The problem that I still don't fully grasp because, growing up with a whole heap of traditions in the original Doctor Who, and then...
Spoilers, I guess. The problem doesn't get solved.
No.
Also, this week, more Advent of Code.
Oh, you missed something.
Oh, what did I miss?
You missed Lost in Space.
I haven't watched season 2 of Lost in Space.
Right, okay.
I got to get there eventually.
Yes.
And Hawkeye continues and is good, and I will probably watch the next episode of it once we're wrapped up here.
Yep.
Advent of Code continues apace.
Okay, so that means... so there's one a day?
There are 2 puzzles, one of which builds on the first.
Okay. Right.
Every day. So
it's like one of those magazines where on the front cover there's a piece of a large wooden sailing boat, and you fork out huge amounts of money for each part, and then halfway through they stop releasing it at the newsagents, and you have to order it, so you've got to pay postage as well. And
I should clarify, while some days will build on previous days, what I mean is the 2 puzzles on any given day are connected to each other.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Usually the second one is a more complicated or more computationally expensive version.
So you're not building Nelson's flagship then?
No. I'm in a submarine though.
Good.
This week I have piloted that submarine.
Mm-hmm.
I have inspected the power and life support systems.
Good.
I've played bingo with a giant squid.
As you do. Squid game.
Well, if I didn't, the squid was going to get mad or something. I don't know.
You don't want to mess with a squid when you're thousands of feet under the...
No. I've avoided hydrothermal vents. Always good. I've modelled the growth of a school of lanternfish and avoided filling my RAM with terabytes of data.
Good.
Because it gets exponential. I've aligned crabs to make a hole in the seafloor to avoid a whale, and I've unscrambled some 7-segment displays.
You're reading a script, aren't you?
I am somewhat, yes.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm winding back a bit. So you've got 7-segment displays that you're dissecting. Did you say
that was scrambled so that the input signals didn't correspond to what was coming out.
Okay.
So you'd put in the right number of signals and get the right number of lights on.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't be the ones you wanted.
Right. Okay.
So I fixed that.
The reason that caught my ear was because this conjuring up of a vision of you in a submarine, I had visions of Nixie tubes. I don't know whether... Are you familiar with Nixie tubes?
Yeah,
right. Good. Yeah. Rather than 7-segment displays. You're going to have to Google Nixie tubes. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole or fathom that depth.
Look up Techmoan. Half his videos are about Nixie tubes, I think.
Well, that's harsh. No, they're more about buying large batch lots of mini-disc players and finding out which ones work.
And looking at boomboxes and cassette players, which are all apparently bad nowadays.
Yes, they all tend to use the same Chinese badly designed tape player mechanism.
You want WoW and Flutter? You can have it.
You can WoW and Flutter.
Yeah. That, I think, is about it for me this week.
Right.
How about you?
Me, my highlight of the week, even though my body is absolutely aching, I went for a kayak with a dear listener, Helen. We kayaked 13 kilometres, a lot of that into headwinds, and it was a very sheltered bay that we decided to start off in, that then goes around a point and into quite exposed waters. Yep. So the aim was to get just far enough to get scared a little as we came around that corner and then turn back. So, yeah, it was a wonderful trip. Lots of bird life and lots of denizens of the deep, I'm sure, including submarines. Actually, there was a Russian submarine, now that you mention it. No word of a lie, a Russian submarine was certainly spotted and identified on our trip.
Right.
Whether it was accurately identified or not is beside the point, but that did happen. Wow, there's this synergy between our weeks.
So anyway,
even though other than this podcast, we are like ships that pass in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
So anyway, I'm going to keep sinking deeper into the ocean over the next
So the theme
weeks.
is continuing then?
There's usually a theme that runs through.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And this year it's a submarine piloted by elves.
I can't remember whether I asked last week or not. Is it one person who sets all of these, or is it a team?
It's one person with a team of beta testers who make sure that it all works.
Cool. And it's all sponsored by Siri.
It's not.
Hey
it's
Siri.
It's not sponsored by Apple at all, but it does have many sponsors.
Cool. That's good.
The list scrolls down several screens.
Good.
Yeah.
So basically, this week has been pretty wonderful. We've both had a wonderful life. What a segue that is.
Wow.
I know. Thomas, we have a film to watch.
We do. That's what the podcast is about, ostensibly.
It is. Now, there is a suggestion that this is our Christmas special, one of two.
Holiday special.
Holiday special. Sorry.
Any holiday around this time.
Around this time. Which I guess leads us on to where I was heading. There is some question as to whether this film is actually a Christmas movie or not. Some say yes, some say no. So it'll be interesting to see what you think. You have not seen it before?
I've not, no.
I have twice, I think, but a very, very, very long time ago. What is it that we're watching?
We are watching It's a Wonderful Life.
You've got the case there.
I do.
Would you be so kind as to tell our dear listener what this film is all about?
Hollywood's best-loved star teams up with America's favourite director to create one of the world's most popular films. It's a Wonderful Life is the ultimate feel-good film, starring the unforgettable James Stewart as George Bailey, the man who receives the greatest Christmas gift of all. A superb ensemble cast includes Donna Reed and Lionel Barrymore. This high-spirited Christmas tale is directed by the immortal Frank Capra and ranks as an all-time favourite of fans and critics alike. This is some terrible sentence structure.
Wow, and they even typed that.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that all of it?
That's all of it.
That's all of it.
Yeah.
We'll go into it in a little more depth than that, I suspect. We're going to hit the play button, we're going to watch this film, and then we're going to talk about it. So we shall catch you on the flip side.
Turn to side B.
Mongrel.
Yep.
That was timing, because I don't think the front door is closed.
It's not. No.
So there's been all sorts of noises. Poor dear listener.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's watch this.
Poor you having to edit this in a day.
Oh, I'll send it through multiple filters. I have a bus filter.
Yep.
I have a motorbike filter.
Yep.
And it'll remove all of those. I also have a Thomas filter that removes all of Thomas's comments.
Is a bus really a filter? It's really just taking the audio from one point to the other.
Good. You mongrel. So by golly, Mary, what did you think of that?
Yeah, that was all right. Wasn't totally engaged right the way through.
It did dip in spots.
Yeah. No, I can see how that became a Christmas classic. It worked.
Yep.
There were parts where it didn't, but it did largely work.
I found it dipped the most, probably the 10 minutes or so right after the introduction of Clarence. Once they're out of the water and things start being explained, it sort of gets a bit heavy on the explanation, then it gathers pace again. Yeah, I don't know whether there's any way around that or not, but yeah, it just sort of lost momentum.
Guy Shaw spends a long time realising the implications of what has happened.
Yes.
And not accepting that something has happened.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it this time round. Sorry, I say that not remembering how much I enjoyed it the last time. So that's not a comparison thing. It's more a case of, yeah, it's a surprisingly solid film still. But is it a Christmas film?
Yeah. Yeah, it's set at Christmas. It's about a generous man. It's about reasonable enough.
It's about suicide. It's about unscrupulous men who don't get brought to justice. They get away with evil and nastiness. And
Well, there's also A Christmas Carol, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, one could delve very deeply, as lots of other people have, into the question mark as to whether it qualifies as being a Christmas movie. But a lot of the tradition of it becoming a Christmas movie had a lot to do with the going into the public domain. Which I'm sure you'll be able to cover in a minute. But because it was such, a lot of television stations who were stuck with the continuous round of traditional Christmas movies had a movie with at least a tenuous link to Christmas time, and it was now free to use.
Yep.
And use it they did every single Christmas. So you've studied up on the and judging from the
it's a bit of a mess.
It is a bit of a mess.
Okay. Here's a very loosely pieced together, based on a brief reading of the Wikipedia article.
Yes.
So the film was made by Liberty Films. Paramount Pictures purchased Liberty Films in 1951. In 1955, the film was sold off to another company, including television rights, the score, the film rights to the story, and the physical film on which the film was. And then soon after, another company took over the rights to the film itself. And then in 1974... this is an era when, in order to keep copyright, you had to renew it regularly.
Yep.
Otherwise, it wasn't yours. Nowadays, a more enlightened time. It's yours as soon as you've made it, and for eons after you've died. Thanks, Disney. So, they failed to renew it in 1974, and so it lapsed. But television stations who wanted to air it still needed to pay royalties, because it was a derivative of a short story, The Greatest Gift, which had its copyright renewed by its original author. And
that in and of itself has a story as well.
Yeah.
But
so that continues. Television stations continue to broadcast it regardless of the need to pay royalties. They pay royalties anyway. In 1993, Republic Pictures, who at this point owned the film rights, tried to enforce copyright on the film, and it worked apparently. And then Republic so now it's under copyright with this new company. They go off to Turner Broadcasting System and give them rights to broadcast a handful of times. It's all very complicated.
It is. It got really, really messy.
Yeah.
And for a while there, control was held because of music copyright.
Yep.
So they thought, right, well, the film is in the public domain, but we still hold the copyright to the soundtrack, and so we'll control it by that. And but it was basically only after 1975 that it became such a big film. Because it was suddenly on television basically twice a year. They play it at Christmas and another time halfway through the year, is my understanding. But and as for the short story rights, the guy who wrote the short story could never get it published, and so made 200 copies basically as a Christmas card to his friends.
And at the end of all this...
Yes.
In 1998, Paramount, who had originally distributed the film and who had not had the rights since 1955, Viacom purchased the parent company of the company that then owned the rights to the film, and so it was back under Paramount.
Back under Paramount, right.
And where I believe it still remains. Not in the public domain.
For a long period there were copies of various quality on DVDs, and I don't know how that happened, because the sequence of events that you just related, as far as DVDs are concerned, I don't know how that
I know
works.
how this one happened. It was distributed by Paramount.
Yeah. Anyway.
And then there's a whole subsection in this about colorization.
Oh, it was one of the first, wasn't it?
It was one of the first that.
Yes. Yes. I vaguely remember the big push for, hey, we can do this. And it was very, very much a case of a classic line from Jurassic Park that we realise we can, but should we? type of thing. Fortunately, it sort of crashed and burned, really, because people realised that this is not good.
It's a Wonderful Life was particularly messy in this regard, because the Colorization Incorporated, who were one of the companies that intended to do this, prepared roughly 10 minutes of it and sent it off to Capra, and Capra was like, yeah, okay, I will pay you an amount to cover some of the costs, and go ahead. And then they gave him back his money because they believed the film was in the public domain, and refused to give him any artistic freedom over how they went over the colorization.
Oh,
and
dear.
so Capra became staunchly against the practice.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, so from a practical point of view, I can understand him being, yes. But it is really an ugly concept. Even with this film alone, the way that it was shot, there are a lot of very contrasty scenes, which don't work well for colorization anyway. The amount of guesswork as to where the greys stop and colour starts seeping in, I don't like it. I really don't like it, and it scares me, just as an aside, that there's this sudden craze for all of these genealogy companies who are offering colorization of family pictures. It's all guesswork, and people are passing things off as, this is what my great-great-great-grandfather really looked like in colour. You can't tell. You've no idea what the clothes he was wearing were the right colour, whether his eye colour was this, whether his skin tone was this. And I don't like it. I really don't like it. And they've extended it even further by using AI animation. So it colorizes your ancestor and then animates it to tilt their head and smile and what have you. And I think it creeps me out in all the wrong ways, but people get really, really excited as if, oh, this person is real now, and it just doesn't work. Anyway, that's an aside.
Other weird things about distribution.
Mm-hmm.
While things were confused,
yes,
in 1993, this one was one of the first feature films to go on CD-ROM for the then Windows 3.1.
Yes, I do have a copy of The Princess Bride on CD-ROM, split over 2 discs, stashed away as part of my collection of obsolete recording media. Oh, so that was one of the first.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Quote, and with citation needed appended to the end of this sentence, prior to its release, as in films on CD-ROM, Windows could only play back about 32,000 frames of video, or about 35 minutes at 15 frames per second.
Ugh. Lovely.
Yeah.
What a wonderful life.
Yeah.
A few points, a few little snippets. The boy who played the young George, the scene where he gets slapped around the head by the pharmacist and his ear starts bleeding because he had an ear problem as a young child in the story. Well, that was actual real blood.
Oh.
Yes, the actor was somewhat inebriated. He was, I guess, needed the liquid sustenance to allow him to portray a drunk, bereaved guy. And yes, he did actually slap him hard enough to make the kid's ear bleed, apparently. This is one of the anecdotes of of this film. And then, so the scene where he's apologising and hugging, and the kid is quite obviously, the kid continued to act, even though his ear is bleeding, and a lot of that emotion was very much in there in real life, because the kid's ear is actually bleeding.
And then he joined the Navy, and then he worked on a bunch of assistant directing and production roles with all manner of companies.
Who's that, the kid?
The kid, yeah.
Right, cool.
Including Ripley's Believe It or Not.
I do not.
Believe it.
And George's... The scene where George and Mary are outside the derelict house and they're throwing rocks at the place. Uh-huh. They had a sharpshooter lined up to shatter the window. I mean, I was watching it and I couldn't see it actually happen. With Mary's throw of the... You could see George's throw of the rock smash the window, or at least the window smashed after it. But I couldn't quite make out Mary's window smashing after throwing it. So they lined up a sharpshooter for Mary, thinking that she wouldn't be able to throw.
It's a long shot.
Yeah, well, she did it. In fact, all through high school, she was softball, I think.
Right.
So, Final anecdote.
Uh-huh.
The scene where they come out of
the party. And
yes.
Billy's drunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
And off he goes out of shot, and then there's this crashing noise.
That's a production assistant knocking some stuff over accidentally.
Yeah.
And the ad-lib that comes after the Billy's fine.
I'm fine.
Worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah, so they left it in, and
Capra paid him $10.
Yes. Yeah. Cool.
Here's an interesting thing that I noticed.
What's that?
So this is a box set.
Yes, it is.
Right? Yes. It has White Christmas on it.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, we'll probably get to that some year.
Do we have to?
We don't have to.
It's not a real favourite of mine.
No. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
Which we've just seen. And The Bells of St. Mary's.
Which is also not a real favourite.
That's not the point I'm trying to make here. In It's a Wonderful Life, as George returns from the world in which he has never been born, he wanders past a cinema with a marquee
yes.
on which is The Bells of St. Mary's.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Which would have been better enforced if we had actually watched it off the DVD.
Yes.
Oh dear.
And don't we wish we did?
Oh.
So we did have a streaming issue, probably about an hour and a half in.
Oh, about an hour, I'd say. Yeah.
Right. It's a 2 hour and 10 minute, I think, film.
It's long.
It's long. It's a very long film. But it actually still, apart from that little bit of pacing that I mentioned before, it really flows quite well for me. But well into the film, the streaming service decided to say, no, I'm having a streaming issue, and then reset to
last known point, which is to say the beginning.
So we had to fast forward through, and even at 32 times speed.
Well, we've got an hour to make up 30 seconds per second. That's a couple of minutes. It took a bit.
Yes. So if we'd watched the disc, we would have been fine.
But we didn't, so we weren't.
Apparently there was a convention at the time, and in fact it was a written convention, that films should not show people benefiting from the proceeds of crime. Right. So at the end of a film, anyone who has committed a crime is either punished for it or has to repay or what have you. And this was one of the first films that actually broke that rule because of the theft of the $8,000. The dishonest procurement of the $8,000. So.
Let's do some inflation at that. That's a paltry sum of $113,472.41.
Which I don't know about you, but that's a fair amount of money to withhold. And yes, I can't remember the name of the
Mr. Potter.
No, I remember Harry Potter's name, but I can't remember the scriptwriter's rule.
I'm all out of tidbits.
You're all out of tidbits. Do you have anything else you wish to say about the film in general?
No.
The number of scenes that were shot at night when it was cold and snowy. Mm-hmm. Most of them were shot during the day on a hot, sweltering summer day. And so there are spots where you can see people sweating in all of their warm clothing. Oh, they won an Academy Award for developing a new artificial snow for this film, for looking realistic snow. Prior to that, they would use white painted cornflakes.
Right.
Each cornflake individually painted, which was notorious as far as recording on-set audio because it would just crunch underfoot and
not like snow.
And no. Anyway, let's wrap this thing up because I've got nothing else to say about this. We've got a few comments from last week, so we might have an introduction to our next segment.
The following segment has no title. We apologise for the inconvenience.
A couple comments on Gravity.
Yes.
Helen says that Sandra Bullock is 1,000 times dead.
At least.
Just very dead.
Very, very dead.
Yep.
It doesn't bear tight scientific scrutiny.
No.
But it is made and filmed in such a way that when you're totally engrossed in it, you can accept these things.
That's space cinema for you.
Yes.
To be honest.
Yeah. And
Jeff,
dear listener Jeff.
Jeff said some things that I'm just gonna brush over because I think I made my stance on the Foley quite vague.
No. I think you can quote dear listener Jeff verbatim.
I could.
You could, and you shall.
No, I don't. I don't know if I will.
I believe this actually prompted Jeff to watch the film. He's had it on the shelf for a long period of time, and the ads for it scared him off as far as vertigo and intensity, I guess, is concerned. But my impression is that upon watching it, he was impressed with the film and with the amount of Foley involved. If
our little podcast inspires others to go on their own still under wraps journey, then that's great.
That's exactly what we're here for, isn't it?
Less cellulose on shelves.
Well, yes, that I hadn't made that connection. We freed some cellulose from somebody else's collection. Wow.
And I'm sure watching your dog was engrossing viewing. Let's see.
That is a bit of an in-joke that if you're a member of the cellulose-free Facebook group, you will understand why it was engrossing watching, or gross, watching Jeff's dog.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing to our attention the sheer amount of podcasts that we've made over the past year. 1,234 minutes is quite a bit to have streamed on Spotify.
It is.
But for one person. You've listened to over 50 hours of us rambling on.
You poor soul.
I think. Hold on. 20? Might be 20. 20 sounds more like it, as far as amount that we've actually produced. Yes. Maths is hard.
Yes.
Maths on the fly is hard.
Yeah.
Thank you for continuing to listen.
I'm still very much for decimalising time. Make it so much easier.
Beats? Swatch beats?
Hey, let's move on.
Pick a film for next week so we can go to bed.
And it's your turn.
It is my turn, and having not had any better ideas, I might have to follow
I wish I'd never been born. Oh, no.
So, It's a Wonderful Life is a film.
Yes, we should watch that.
I think we agree on that.
Yes.
And it was very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And
has spawned numerous parodies and twists on the theme of, and blatant rip-offs. Speaking of blatant rip-offs...
Yeah, speaking of blatant rip-offs, let's talk about the Muppets.
Okay.
It's
not easy being green.
Nah, see, that's a good movie. We're not watching that one next week.
Hang on, which movie is that in? I've got you, haven't I?
That's the Muppet movie.
No, it's not.
It's not the Muppet.
He does not sing.
No,
he sings Rainbow Connection.
All the same, it's not this film.
No, it's not.
So, there was a while there where the Muppets weren't really doing a whole lot.
No,
to
they
be
weren't.
Honest. And then NBC rolled around and they were like, would you like to make a television special for Christmas? And what ensued was this film. It's a very Merry Muppets Christmas movie. Loosely based on the story behind It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
It's not very good.
So why are you proposing it?
Because, as has been established, when we watch bad films, conversation ensues.
Okay. Fair enough.
And also because, despite this being a terrible, terrible idea,
yes,
it is also the best one I had.
Hey, and maybe this time around, we might suddenly appreciate the deep, subtle nuances that are brought out by the pig and the frog.
There's some interesting discussion to be had here, not just about this film, but about the Muppets in general, this era and onwards.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to next week.
We will.
Yeah.
And we hope that you can join us when we watch It's
a very merry Muppets Christmas
movie. But until then, we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
You have been listening to Cellulose Free. Your hosts were Colin, who produces and edits the show, and Thomas, who makes the artwork and music. Cellulose Free is recorded in the Deranged Cat Studios in scenic Tasmania, Australia. We keep track of our extensive physical media collection through My Movies, which we highly recommend. You can find links to that, as well as other places you can find us in the show notes. Cellulose Free is a Hi Hello production.
I hate you. You could have chosen Rare Exports.
I could have chosen Rare Exports, but
you didn't.
The thematic, connections here.
Okay, fair enough.
And also, if I'd chosen Rare Exports, we would have had to prepare snacks.
That is true. We don't want to